The Genesis GV80 has been getting a ton of attention since it came out, and it's all well deserved. Hell, we even named it our best luxury 3-row SUV of the year because it is just so good. But there's another SUV I would take a long, hard look at if I were in the market, and this is it, the Lincoln Aviator. It might not be riding high on a wave of hype like the GV80, but it quietly comes together as a very impressive package that delivers most of the same qualities for about the same price, with the added bonus of a bunch of extra room inside. You know, I spent a good amount of time in that GV80 and I enjoyed just about every minute of it. And there's also nothing wrong with an Audi, BMW, or Mercedes-Benz if you'd prefer something just a little more predictable. But an SUV from any one of those brands can easily touch six figures when you load it up with the kind of stuff I have in here. But this Aviator, try 84 grand out the door before tax. That is right in line with the GV80, and it is very, very reasonable for what you're getting here. Now, the Aviator Reserve actually starts at about 71,000 bucks before tax, but this one I'm driving is loaded up with a bunch of extras. But let's start with the stuff that comes standard. And as far as the meat and potatoes go, you've got a twin turbocharged V6 under the hood, as well as all-wheel drive, because that's the way the premium SUV market works in Canada. We skip that base rear-wheel drive trim in just about every SUV you can buy because we do deal with winter weather and all kinds of nasty conditions, so you may as well get that all-wheel drive right out of the gate. You also get stuff like adaptive dampers and all kinds of advanced safety features, but we'll get to those a little bit later. So let's talk about what you get inside instead. And there is a lot to like here too, like this fantastic leather upholstery, a 4-zone climate control system, a pretty good active noise cancellation system, and heated and ventilated front and second row seats. None of that comes standard in the GV80 with the exception of heated seats. There's also a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot, which you don't get from Genesis, though that thing's infotainment system blows this one out of the water. This uses a 10-inch touchscreen, and it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I like, but it is very laggy and not very responsive at all. Maybe it's just this one I'm testing, but I do have problems here. I've got to tap icons more than once to actually open that feature, and when I swipe from one menu to the next, it's just very slow. But it does work well, and again, with those phone hookups, I can hook my phone up and use my Google Maps or my Apple Music, so at least it has that going for it. And this stereo is pretty good too, but there's an upgrade as well if you want just a better sound system. But I could live with this standard one. I think it's got like 14 speakers, and it sounds really good. So let's talk about some of the extras in here, like these 30-way adjustable front seats that have massage for both the driver and the passenger. And that's not something you can get in the GV80 either, though I will say that this driver's seat is just a little less comfortable than that one. That one is so thick and cushy. This is just kind of thin, and I find a problem with this bolster here, and I'm getting some upper leg pain, though again, I do have a great massage system that you don't get in the GV80. That one is very basic, and it's only for the driver, so at least this is for the driver and the passenger. And something else that's really cool is this center console in the back. That was something I loved about the Mazda CX-9, and I love to see it here. And it's got this little touch panel with controls, so you can even control the audio from back there, but you can also lock it out if you don't want the kids messing with your presets. The Aviator is a lot like the Ford Explorer it's based on. It's a little bit bigger than the average SUV this size, including that GV80, but it's smaller than the Mercedes GLS class or the BMW X7. And either way, there is a ton of room inside for a family of 4, thanks to these second row captain's chairs, plus a bunch of cargo room behind them. Something else that's standard here that you don't get in the GV80 is a third row of seats. Now, if you need a proper 3-row SUV, you're definitely going to want to step up to something like the Lincoln Navigator, but if you only need those for when the in-laws are visiting, they're perfectly fine. And let me put it to you like this, I'm 6'3", and I can fit in that third row of seats without taking up all the second row legroom. I can't even fit into the third row of the GV80. But something else that's cool is how usable the cargo area is, even with those third row seats upright. Our cargo testing pedal car Patty, she fits back here with the tailgate closed, and that is very rare for an SUV this size. That space really is an advantage that this thing has over just about anything else it competes with, and it's hard to put a price tag on that kind of practicality. Now, this thing doesn't have the road preview function that you can get in the Aviator that analyzes the road ahead and adjusts the suspension accordingly, but there are those standard adaptive dampers, and they do a pretty good job of softening the blow of most of the stuff you run into out here. But just like the smaller Corsair, this suspension really struggles to manage the unsprung weight of the massive alloy wheels, so it's just not quite as smooth as it should be. But that doesn't mean this is uncomfortable, and I experienced the same thing when I drove the BMW X7. And speaking of all the SUVs I've reviewed, we have tons of great videos, so you may as well subscribe so you don't miss out on any of them. But anyways, when you're just cruising around casually in the Aviator, it has a really kind of lumbering quality to it. It's the same kind of duality as the GV80. Here, it's really luxurious, but also a little bit truck-like. And just like that thing, it's not too sporty or too comfortable. It's a nice blend of both. But what really surprised me the most about this thing is how it is when you're hustling it around. Those adaptive dampers definitely help, and there's a nice poise and composure to it, and there's not much body roll at all, which surprised me given how big this thing is. This engine is also fantastic, and it's a major point in favor of this over the GV80 because in that thing, the base engine is a 4-cylinder, and that's in the 2 cheapest trims. But every version of the Aviator Reserve comes with this 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 that makes a fairly ridiculous 400 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque, and it'll gladly pin you back in your seat when you jam on that skinny pedal. It's a bit of a handful, to be honest with you. It's not the same kind of total performance package that you get from something like an AMG-tuned Mercedes GLE or a BMW X5M, but it feels just as eager to accelerate as either of those things. It's really nice, but I like that balance, that duality of it where it's luxury and a little bit of performance. But now let's talk about some of the stuff I don't like, and they do start with these toggles for the gear selector. You get the same ones in the Corsair, and I didn't like them there, but they're even worse here because they're tucked into this little nook on the dash. I don't like them, and I'm continually struggling to find them when I go to put it in reverse to back into my parking spot. I hate them, and something else I hate are these buttons for the door releases that you get with the convenience package. It's like an unnecessary reinvention of the wheel, and that's really the weird thing about this cabin overall. Because you have these convoluted controls for the gear selector or the door releases, but then you have conventional ones for HVAC and audio. It's just a really odd mashup. I also hate to nitpick, but I do not like the buttons you get for the power third row because they are the same as you get in the much cheaper Ford Explorer, and I hate that. That's the kind of stuff that really takes a premium product down market. But I do have to say that the vibe of this cabin is very nice overall. There's a little bit of gloss black plastic in here that attracts dust and smudges, but it's not too bad, and it's offset by all of this real wood trim up here on the dash as well as the console. And again, this leather is absolutely beautiful. It doesn't look quite as nice as the quilted stuff you get in the GV80, but it feels just as good to the touch and when you're sitting in these chairs. The other thing I love is the way Lincoln executes its adaptive cruise control system. Now it's cool because when you don't have it on, none of the buttons are illuminated, just this one here by your thumb to turn the system on. But then once you do it, all of these little icons light up so you can do stuff like set your speed or adjust your gap from the vehicle ahead of you. But I do have to say that this is optional. It's not standard. A ton of other safety stuff is standard, but you do have to pay to get adaptive cruise control, though it does include a self-parking system as well as reverse automatic braking. The other thing you get with this adaptive cruise control is a pretty solid highway driving assist system. And what it'll do is chip in with a little help with the steering when you're out on the highway as long as you have both hands on the wheel. It'll even help steer through corners. Very cool stuff. But you don't have to use it if you don't want to. You can still use the adaptive cruise control without, and the same goes with all the other advanced safety features. You get lane keep assist that you can turn off on the end of the signal stock here, as well as forward collision warning with auto braking and pedestrian detection and blind spot monitoring. Honestly, about the only complaint about these systems I have is that forward collision warning, which is a little bit sensitive, but at least it hasn't jammed on the brakes on me, and it is pretty easy to shut it off if you'd rather not use it. To recap, I like the duality to the Aviator's drive, the spacious cabin, and the value it delivers. I don't like the controls for the gear selector or the glossy plastic inside, and I wish the driver's seat was just a little more comfortable. All the hype around the Genesis GV80 is 100% well-deserved, and it gives this segment a much-needed shakeup. But it's not the only alternative to the usual suspects out there, and there is a lot to like about this Aviator too, especially all the extra room it has inside. It's smooth, balanced, spacious, and this Reserve trim stays below 90 grand, even with every options box checked. That is impressive value for the segment, and it easily makes this one of my favorite SUVs like it on the market.